Doctor, you touched upon the topics of semen retention and no fap. A lot of young men whom I interact with tell me with a great amount of pride that they have abstained from masturbation for a certain number of days as a part of the no fap challenge. So, I mean, I just want to ask or want to know from you: is there any tangible benefits in taking no fap challenge, or do you gain any kind of memory retention, power, energy level increase, or any other virtues do I doing no fap, going for a no fap challenge? Or if it is not there, then why are these young guys doing it?
Yeah, not really. I mean, there's certainly no physiological mechanism of semen sitting in your prostate and seminal vesicles that would help your body in any way. Right. So at best, it would be a placebo effect that you think you're healthier because you're abstaining from masturbation. Another quasi placebo effect is that you feel better about yourself because you're doing something challenging. And if that's the case, like, okay, but you could have selected anything that's challenging, like stay off social media for a month and like pat yourself on the back for doing something that's difficult. Like, why did you select masturbation? So there's probably something underlying, like feeling guilty or ashamed about masturbation, why you selected that to abstain from it and not something else that would be equally, if not more challenging to stay off of, or not to do. That not masturbating would actually help your body in a healthy way. There's no data to support that, because when we look at the mechanisms of orgasm and ejaculation and the role of semen sitting in your body, it's not doing anything for your body. And so the problem with it is actually you're setting yourself up for actually ill effects, because if you're abstaining, you're going on this streak of like feeling good about yourself. You're conquering your lust or whatever they think they are doing and feeling good. But inevitably, you're going to masturbate at some point, right? Yeah. And what they call like a relapse. And what we know from the data that this has been studied from like NoFap forums for people who have like quote unquote relapsed, who they've masturbated after like swearing abstinence, that they are extremely distressed by that, to the point of having suicidal ideation, because they are so depressed and they feel so bad that they couldn't keep with their NoFap streak. And so it's self-torturous. They do not have to do this for themselves. There's no reason that they have to abstain from masturbation. There's no physical reason that they have to abstain. Their body is not benefiting from it for any reason whatsoever. And so it's just this self-imposed torture that they're putting on themselves, these rules, these arbitrary rules, for no reason whatsoever.
So is this semen retention also a related concept, or is it something very different from NoFap? What is the difference?
It's pretty similar. They both involve like abstinence, at least from ejaculation. They get into like some differences. Like NoFap really focuses a lot on like abstaining from masturbation to pornography. Sometimes you see semen retention really focus more on the mechanisms of ejaculation. Sometimes people who are into semen retention will say that they're okay with having orgasms, but they try to hold in their ejaculation, and they talk about different techniques in order to like hold in their ejaculation while still having an orgasm. The funny thing about that is that more than likely their ejaculation is actually just going backwards into their bladder, and that they just urinate out later, so it doesn't really matter. So there can be some differences with that, but ultimately at its core, there's similarities, because there's just this belief that somehow ejaculation is harmful for them in some way. Some physical harm is coming to their body by ejaculating. And there's a lot of misinformation about just the physical mechanisms of ejaculation. And that's the big unfortunate thing, is that they just are pretty ignorant about basic anatomy and physiology, thinking that ejaculation is hurtful, when in fact it's not at all.
So both NoFap as well as semen retention doesn't have any clinical evidence that it leads to any tangible benefits like improved fertility or higher sex drive or things like that.
No, it doesn't. They try to hide behind some studies that's they think support their claim, but it doesn't really. Some of the studies that they point to either have been retracted because they've been junk, they're junk science, or the studies don't really say what they think they're saying. So there's some scientific illiteracy with this too, that a lot of times that especially with the NoFap guys, since they're really focused on abstaining from masturbating to pornography, there's a lot of misinformation about the effects of porn watching, and they'll cite all these studies that they think is saying one thing, like, oh, if you watch porn it damages the gray matter in your brain and things like that, so by abstaining from porn you're actually helping your brain. And I know what studies they're citing, and I've read those studies, and they're not saying what they think they're saying. So that's the other unfortunate piece, is that they just don't have like the scientific literacy to fully understand the research that they're even citing to kind of support their claims and support their lifestyle of abstinence.
Doctor, why do you think a lot of men think that they are expelling testosterone through ejaculation? Is it because of the location of where the testosterone is produced in the testes, and people, by mistaken assumption, think that it is expelled through ejaculation? Or is there anything else, lack of understanding or awareness about the physiological process? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think one thing is that ignorance around just basic anatomy and physiology. I've talked with some guys who practice semen retention or no fap, and there does seem to be some ignorance around how the body works with ejaculation. And I think it's not unique to guys who practice semen retention. There's generally some, I think, a common misunderstanding that when a guy ejaculates, that semen is coming from the testicles directly. I mean, that's the whole thing of like draining the balls or like nutting, that the testicles are directly involved. And it's like, no, the seminal fluid is coming from the prostate gland and the seminal vesicles. The testicles aren't involved at all. Their testicles aren't even involved with the sperm cells that are coming out. The sperm cells, the mature sperm cells, are coming from the epididymis. They're the small structures next to the testicles. The testicles are producing the sperm cells, but the mature ones are being stored in the epididymis, and that's what's involved with ejaculation. Now, testicles are involved with hormone production and testosterone, but testosterone is not getting ejaculated. Now, so there may be some misunderstanding of like the fluid that actually is coming out and where it is coming out from during ejaculation. So I think that is part of it. The other part, I think, is that scientific illiteracy, because I do see some studies, or at least one study that is commonly cited as proof that if you abstain for 7 days, your testosterone is being increased. And then you see a lot of these like masculine wellness accounts online that are just making stuff up of like, if you abstain for a week, your testosterone will increase 400%. And I'm like, you do not want your testosterone to increase 400%. Like, there's a range that you want it to be, you don't want it to be high, right? You want, like most like blood work kind of lab numbers, you want a normal range. You don't want it to be low. You don't want it to be high. That's going to have its own problems if you have very high testosterone. So there's some ignorance about like testosterone numbers to begin with, but a lot of times they're citing this study that seemed to have claimed that by abstaining from ejaculating for a week, that raised testosterone numbers. Well, that was one of those studies that was later retracted. There were some problems with it. There was one study from I think like 2001 on like a handful of German men that showed some increase in testosterone after a period of abstinence, but that was a very small study. That was just one, and that was countered by other studies that have shown that actually more frequent orgasms is associated with higher testosterone. But the big thing to know is that testosterone is a complicated hormone, and it fluctuates for guys throughout the day. And the bigger takeaway here is that masturbating or not masturbating is not going to take your testosterone level outside of that normal range, right? So if you are actually hypogonadal, meaning low testosterone, clinically low testosterone, you can't abstain your way out of that to get into a normal range of testosterone. You are going to have hormonal replacement therapy through injections or a topical testosterone treatment regimen. So masturbate, don't masturbate, it's not going to impact your testosterone to the point of being clinically relevant at all.
Also, doctor, many men also claim or complain that they experience a sense of weakness after ejaculation. Is this a perception, or there is more to it, like the sedative effect of masturbation or the prolactin hormone, which is released after, ejaculation?
Yeah. Yeah, it can be a little bit of both. So, and this is one misunderstanding with like no fap and semen retention guys, that they think like masturbation is unique to compare to like partnered sex, but an orgasm is an orgasm.
Exactly.
The body experiences like the same physiological response, the same hormones and like neurotransmitters are involved. So yeah, so the nature of orgasm, the neurochemical, I'm going to like be very simplistic with this, but the neurochemical response of orgasm, there's prolactin involved, there's cannabinoids involved, there's oxytocin involved. All of this experience leads the person typically to feel at ease, relaxed, content, satiated. For most people, it's a feel-good experience, at least short-term after an orgasm.
Exactly.
Right? So it's a positive experience, a relaxing experience. However, for some people, especially those who may feel a little bit anxious about masturbating, have a little bit of guilt and shame about it, those feelings of relaxation and ease can feel like weakness. They feel like they lost something. The feeling of satiation and contentment can feel like a motivation, like they've been drained of something. And so that's where that feeling, that very normal feeling of an orgasm and the post-orgasmic like bliss and relaxation that's supposed to be reinforcing can be misinterpreted. And those bodily sensations can be like, can be like a miscue, can be filtered through like this anxiety about masturbation and can be interpreted as, oh, something is wrong with me. And that's kind of like similar to how like somatic disorders work, that, you have like a normal like tension kind of headache and you interpret it as something much more severe. Like, oh, I think I have like a tumor or an aneurysm or something. It's like, no, this is just tension. And you're making it worse because you're worried that now you think you have a tumor. And, ironically, you're making the headache actually worse, in which you make that increases the concern that you actually have a tumor because the pain is getting worse. So it operates very similarly as like somatic disorders. And so, yeah, they're real sensations, but I think that what's happening here for the no fap and semen retention guys is that it's just a misinterpretation of bodily sensations.
Okay, doctor, thank you so much for sharing your time with me today. And I hope I can connect with you again sometime in the future with a different topic.
Yeah, thanks for having me.